Now available in paperback and Kindle Unlimited. Isis, Escape from Transylvania. The goddess next door and John Haynes must escape a horde of vampires on the hunt in this horror-filled Isis series adventure. Get Isis, Escape from Transylvania in paperback and Kindle Unlimited today. Yesterday I had an epiphany about this strong, educated, Afro-American Negro female. And when it comes down to this black woman, she oftentimes loves to brag about the college degree that she worked for, and she loves to brag about her high-profile corporate job in corporate America. However, when we take a look at her son, we oftentimes see a boy who oftentimes sits on her sofa playing video games or sitting there bickering and arguing on a laptop or an iPhone that she paid for with other grown men on social media or other teenage boys on social media. And many of these black females, they say that they have these high profile corporate jobs and they have these high profile positions, yet they never make a single effort to get their sons up off those sofas and into a job. And this is something that I came to an epiphany about because oftentimes I hear about these strong, educated, so called professional black women bragging about their degrees and bragging about their high profile jobs, but they never once use any of their influence and clout on those jobs to get their sons some sort of employment at the companies they work at. And when it comes down to black male unemployment is at a high. But when it comes down to these black females who are on these jobs, you would think they would go out to make efforts to try to lower the unemployment rate in their community by putting in a word for their sons at their jobs. But they never make an effort to put in any sort of word at their job for their sons. And that's really perplexing to me because these females, in many cases, work in human resources. So they know what jobs are open, what jobs are available, and they know what jobs their sons could possibly do at this company, yet they never once make a single effort to try to help their sons get a job at these companies. And again, that's one of those things that is kind of mind boggling to me because many of these women said they could raise a boy to be a man. And many of them also said they could also be the mother and the father. And part of the father's job was preparing the boy to be able to go out here and go out to take responsibility for himself when he got older by going out to do things like getting a job. And oftentimes, a father would go out and use his influence at his company that he worked at to get his son his first job. And this job, in many cases, would be an entry level position like one of these jobs in the mailroom or one of these jobs in the warehouse or one of these jobs, sweeping and mopping and dusting. But this job would not be something that the boy would like, but it would be something that would allow him to learn about how to get a work ethic, and it would allow him to learn how to make his own money and start learning how to be responsible for himself so he could learn how to do things like budget his money and learn how to build up the discipline and resolve to save his money over time to buy those things like he wanted, like video games and airtime on a cell phone or internet access. So he would learn how to be responsible for what he bought for himself, and he would learn how to be responsible for himself. But when it comes down to the sedity black females out here who say that they are so strong and educated and they can raise a boy to be a man on their own, they never once try to make any efforts to help their sons achieve any sort of financial independence and social interdependence so that they can learn how to be able to be responsible for themselves or take care of themselves. And these are women, again, who work in human resources in many cases, and many cases work in major executive positions or junior executive positions, and they have the influence and the clout with supervisors to put in a word for their sons to go work at one of these companies and start learning how to make their own money. But you never hear about any of these black women making any sort of effort to try to help their sons find any sort of employment or start taking the road towards being financially independent. No, when it comes down to most black women, they coddle their sons and they keep them codependent by going out here and buying them everything. Because when it comes down to many of these black women who have sons, they'll go out of their way to buy this boy a pair of $300 Air Jordan shoes, a $1,000 Pelly Pelly jacket, a $800 or $900 iPhone, a $500 Xbox, but they won't tell that boy to go out and get a job to learn how to pay for his own stuff. No, they would rather buy the stuff for him because they want to continue to keep having power over that boy, and they want to keep that boy stranded in a codependent relationship with them rather than be an interdependent man who is financially independent and is learning to take the stepping stones on the way to the road of manhood. No, they would rather keep their boy stranded in a state of arrested development where he remains a perpetual teenager rather than start taking those footsteps on the road to manhood. And that's all about them maintaining power and control over this boy and having power over him by controlling the resources over him. And this is something that many black women do because, again, they are insecure and they feel that if this boy grows up to be a man, they are going to be left alone. But this is what a boy is supposed to grow up to become. He's supposed to grow up to become a man who is capable of caring for himself, taking responsibility for himself, and meeting his own needs. And what happens when these black women continue to coddle these boys is that these boys never learn how to grow up to become the men that meet their own needs. Instead of what they do is they move away from their mothers and then move in with their girlfriends and continue to take the emotional hose from their mothers and attach it to their girlfriends and continue a codependent cycle. And this codependent cycle, again, could easily be broken because many of these so called educated professional black women could start making efforts to cut that emotional hose and cut those apron strings by using their influence to go to their bosses and put in a word for their sons and allow them to start getting jobs. Because if these boys go out here and get jobs, then the mother does not have to take care of her son. Her son can start contributing to the household and start paying part of the bills for that Xbox, for that internet, and for that phone, and that takes a burden off the mother. But unfortunately, many of these mothers are so caught up in the power they believe they wield over their sons that they're not thinking about how giving him more responsibility actually takes a lot of the burden off them. Because once your son starts working, that's going to take a burden off of you. But many of these black women, again, they're caught up in their feelings about the power they have over their sons, and that's why they continue to keep the emotional hose attached to the boy. And that's the epiphany I had regarding these black boys, especially in these single mother households, and their mothers, because their mothers love to sit there and brag about this big job they have in corporate America, all the money that they're making, the big houses they have, the big cars they have. But when it comes down to their sons, they never prepare them with the lessons that only a man can teach regarding discipline, regarding character, and regarding developing a resolve. These are lessons that only a man is willing to teach his son because he understands that his son has to go out of the world into the world and be a man on his own. But many mothers don't want their sons to go out into the world and be a man on their own because they're afraid if their son goes out into the world, he may start learning to be his own man, and he may start to pull away from her. But that's all part of the natural process of being a man. A man is supposed to pull away from his mother, and he's supposed to cut the apron strings and go out and be his own man and meet his own needs and take care of himself. But most black women, they hinder their sons from doing this because they believe if they get this boy a job, what will happen is he will start standing up for himself and standing up against her. But what he's doing is making those steps again towards being a man. And they want to keep the boy stranded in that state of arrested development. And by keeping that boy stranded in a state of arrested development, they are impeding the growth of the black community because we have all this black male unemployment and we have all these black females working, but those black females are making no efforts to try to help their sons take those first steps towards manhood. And one of the first steps a boy takes towards manhood is getting his first job. Instead, they would rather see their son sitting on their sofa with expensive stuff that they bought, bickering and arguing with another man online about his opinion. And that's very counterproductive because that's really sucking the life out of that boy and preventing him from being the best man he could possibly be. I mean, I look at all these so called educated, strong, independent black women, and they have all this so called power at their job, all these executive positions, all these director positions, all these management positions, but they never once make any sort of effort to try to get that son of theirs a job. They never make any effort to get their boyfriends a job. And a reason that I believe that a lot of them don't want to do this is because they understand that if this man gets a job, he's going to get power. And if their son gets a job, he's going to get power. And he's going to start wanting to have more of a say over things because when a man has resources, he then has a say over things. And the way they can take the power away from the man is to keep him away from the resources economically so that he cannot have a say over anything and he has to depend on her for everything. And again, that's a codependent relationship that prevents men from moving forward and prevents men from actualizing their potential. And black women, they do this and don't think about it because they sit there and think about the power they have on this job. But the greatest power you could have is helping a young boy start taking real steps towards becoming a man who can take care of himself and meet his own needs, and then later possibly try to help you meet your needs in the future. If you'd like to see me make more videos like this, you can donate to my Patreon by clicking the link in the description box. And if you want to try some of my SJS Direct Men's Issues books, like the Simp series, and help your boy become a strong man, you may do so by clicking the link to Amazon.com. That's all I have to say for this video. You can comment, rate, and subscribe.